Inside Story Uganda, real source of political updates.
Nzenga bwenda n'omukukula Tamale Mirundi ya mcheka na gonna kolwaliro mwase mchano basaba ne banyavu bana famena abalungi abatulisa abali gye muli yonna mukaba bulungi twagala okumuyanza twagala okumubaza olw'ekisa kye kingi ekiberera olunaku luno lwaliro ennaku z'omwezi ziri mukaaga ez'omwezi guno ogw'omunaana omwaka 2021 obudde bukedde bulungi ddala twagala okubaza Katonda. It's a Friday morning ndi n'omukukula Tamale Mirundi mu studios era bwe tuno bwe tubeera ne tukwasaganya ensonga mutabani wa Yohana ne Mole namatovu era gwe tukomewo naye natero nakuno olwaliro tubala musenyu banafe mwena abalungi abatuliza abali gye muli yonna mwebale kwanti kumukono natera kwe muli mwebale kwanti natera mutuwuliriza olunaku luno olwaliro kweri okay bwe tutono abatuwuliriza abali gye muli yonna mwebale kwanti muli bulungi mwebale kwanti natera kwe muli obudabukedde omukukulavu lamusa kubalungi abatuliza
basuze bati Abaganda bagamba nti oli mugwagwangala musebwagale ate mwebali tebaddamu
olamusa wantu nga bagadde abeeyo mwasuze mutyanno muri bulungi omalako covid wuyo mulaba covid yita kuva mu ngalo akoze bulungi ate kalungi
coronavirus the best kubanga ebisigadde munaaba sabbuuni kati omalubina abaataate n'obisimulamu ne kano kukattirawo
kabera mu ngalo
singa batukolyako ne research oba okanywa singa kuvizitali
tebatunywesa tebatunywesa
ebibala by'omusajja oli professor ki
Magola professor oli Magola yamuleeta
omuvuka bamuyita kyakulaga musajja musoga yasoma viruses nakolaga nono professor Nazir naye yajja wano ne bagana president omulaba kadaga yamutwalayo ebaga nti Magola muppi era bye bakoze eyo factory eri ematugga naye olwembadde nsaba tukyuseemu Nabbanja yayogedde ekigambo
ku accountability committee za parliament naga nti
omanyi yali commissioner
ndizanguzi
era yali tayagala kugenda mu kubwa minister
commissioner parliament akola ki
ayina sente mpitirivu abeera more powerful than a minister. Nabbanja didn't want and Ugwanga alabanga demotion wena baga nti Museveni ayinza okukolera ekintu notakitegeera mu initially yes naye ate nga yayina kyalaba ekijja
so Nabbanja okugamba nti accountability committees za parliament ziria
was once there yes kyovalaba nti omukulembeze asobola okuva mu buyeera ekintu ekyo nkibagamba nnyo tioyinza okuteeka omwana mu supermarket oba mu business yonna eyo neegwa eye nebeerawo because he used his work to understand why he was failed. Nti Kagame is perfecting Museveni's policies yategeera wano ekyaleetawo obuzibu where things went wrong. Kagame is a better Museveni ku corruption kuba yaliwo wano kati kyovalaba nti oyinza okuddira omuntu omusikaawo n'omulekawo president n'akola ebikusinga ezo kuba badde
abaku understanding ngalaba byolemeddwa
oba abadde ayanda amayini nga byokola kati ndabaga nti president alina rules esatu ze yakola which have changed the political landscape in this country.
Enchi yakola
appointments
mu cabinet nimbya
she changes the politics within a very short time. Ngogamba nti abo ngali ndevubuka libakote babakwata bati
referendum bali kuti
information ebadde eva wano era kati abasinga okutya Lumbuye si Lumbuye Museveni kanoti
Lumbuye teyetya
hapana batya kumutuusa wa namubuulire baani ababadde bakuwa ebintu ebyo
twakyogedde kino nowana conference ne Lumbuye abeere ttake ayinza kyo kubanga
nabagamba nti entalo zonna ziva mu lubiri all of Museveni's problems originate from the palace. That once he stabilized his palace, things have changed fundamentally. Nanabi, abantu abagenze ewambabazi.
Banunyayoji.
Anti bagenze wasali n'abagoba. Badukite ewambabazi.
Mbuchati.
Nebadde ewambabazi. Nanabi olutalo gwetumulumanyi. Baleese omukyayina wana nanti musango gwa organic gutandika lwakubiri. Kakali abasajja bali abayisisi kye bakola bayawulamu abantu ebibinja bibiri. Kuba erijjule bagijjawo nabano bebawa dola besonda mu dola miliyoni 3 ate ne bazibbangana erizaatuukaaga abasajja baga muli baffere katubaveemu mututegeere. ICC nekuva ne mu International Court of Justice nekugenda waggulu kandi babatema mu bibiri ne bagamwe abantu bana amakampuni agatwalanga abaana ebweru and it's estimated that 4,000 Ugandan girls were killed in India alone and their organs were extracted ne bazitunda bamalanga basa bujekitinga for prostitution ne basasula tikiti zaabwe kati bajja basajja ne baganda abo tusobola kuwabula musajja ayinza okuba yatunze ente ye mu katale k'omubuulo yaga nti oba oli agenda kulunda oba agenda kukolayo naye nagitwala mu lufula yaba amanyi nti egenze kusalibwa abatugira tubawummula naye abaddira mu Uganda ne battiramu abantu ne baddirawo amalwaliro ga Uganda ne bagafuula lufula spare parts katale k'ewakiseka Pakistan ne bamusalira ku kibonerezo n'abakyayina babiri Pakistan nayogera banne
so kati omukyayina gwade balese wakola ki
anti omukyayina kakati bategeera nina information nakugamba nti Professor Kanyerezi bwe yali agenda okufa yajja na confessing ne mu recording nandikira olukalala lwa ba doctors be yakozesa yakitandika kakati chairman wabwe omumanyi nagenda ewa Kanyerezi namuga goli mukadde ogenda kufa fitu efficient tuzaagala bano basoma wagenze ne wa Mirundi kati ekikolesa ki namuga nti ekindese mpolo kala lwa ba doctors abo fitu bakozesa ogenda kufa Professor namugamba naye abavubuka b'ennaku zino bamwaba mutya yali ava Nairobi I'm remaining with very short time to die naye abavubuka b'ennaku zino bamwabeera mutya nenkugamba ebintu birimu akabyeri oganye you give me the list of doctors for your date
Professor ngagenda
kudi ete bamanyi nti mashini yange ekola kati bwe bategeera nti mashini weeri ne salaba gobye gundi bategedde nti bibasigaddeko bokka ku list bana abamakampuni babalese ne baconcentratinga ku killers one kyobola bali balese teka mu parliament mu cabinet nti donatinga
company swala abantu bweru
zo bazije
batwalanga tibamanyi
it happened eri let us concentrate in Uganda but Dr. ba Uganda 66 surgeons are going to go. They frustrated Museveni's efforts to bring Cuban doctors because they knew they could not kill Ugandans and you die a painful death. Batwala biramu
tebalinda bya muntu amaze kufa
singala twala bya muntu amaze kufa. Do you have more dead than the Pakistanis, than the Chinese who are here, than the Israelis?
Bebatingo kufa
omusango gw'omwana oyo bakwata Nansan bamusanga ne billion 10 mu nju ayina ka drill bakwana omwana omuwala omugezi babumujjamu obwongo omwana omuwala oy'emyaka 16 n'akabiri mu 7 bamujjamu reproductive system ye ne bagiplantinga mu muntu omulala
ogende kabutokuzala tusokadde wali kunabanja
kakati nabanja bwaleeta omukyayina akuba ebyuma byange
yabikubye
ayinga abikuba bwa nali basekiro
naye ebyo byuma watugamba obama yende babikuba batya byuma
ngenda okuwulira mugunde
nze nakulaba wano ng'oli mulwadde
li nyananga nibya kiki ekyo mu kyayina mu nyumba yange mboka etokota twatwa
akatolaba ebisibyo
ndaba bubiri chwi de mukazi wange mpuli olukyayina olwogerebwa mu nyumba mpuli olukyayina oli mu nyumba
ndabwo kalulira banga ndabala balulira
kiki ekirimu ngenda okera kumakya nga bakoze system ndowooza akakyayina kalogo bali bakoze system okuba ebyuma
kuba ebintu bino birimu eddubu ebintu
n'omunaala gwe kaada kona kuba n'essimu yaako neefumuuka era kagenda mu 6 months kagenda kubeera Brian kakati bateesaganya $500,000
$500,000
yes ne bakaleeta kakati ne bakawaako $10,000 kakati kaze bwe katukidde minisita nikamugaa nti wayi omusajja akubye ebyuma byange byonna abimazeewo system gye wandeetera gwanga nti alina buzindaalo
miyenga muleeta gimanyi
ti omusajja alina ebyuma tanti omulimu gukulemye ate gunnemye guti nga nebyuma byange bifudde endagaano egamba ki mitalo kya $5 wampateko 10
anti nakuwadde kuba ziri
ngeze mu kooti kaguze balooya mbabazi si yabataasiza mbabazi omuchina ne minister mbabazi si yabataasiza ngenda kuba obutambi bwonna nekyabadde wa mbabazi nawa bino ebyuma byajja kulema anti birina combination biri mubiri China ya dale ese dogo na nyanga li mpulira li mu nyumba kuna chiba
mbira kuna nyanga o kubanga
kati olutalo kumaliriza
ebisulo za President Museveni yabikuwa ebiri mu biri
63 surgeons are going to be arraigned before nebyokwoleza ku Serena ku gondi ku zumu babigobye bayina kutemba nyonyi
ezira gawa
anti bagenda kuweleza Hague. If they don't go, they are going to be announced throughout you go ensi yonna babiri ba fugitives. Mulose kubalumaze lokuti abantu balwali. Singa mumpereza ne sente ku simu. Namba kubiti tewali wali mu Uganda yalisobola kukola kintu ekyo. Kakati kino
mama nabanja
kana akatabo
ya government accountability
sanzuko ya bwana mikakatabo
ziri ya sente
sanzu ya wandi
mafude abamuvumye
nagamba
agezako ku
singa Museveni yagwa mu 2016 nasoma obutabo bwange yalitegedde tinategeera baali bamukubi yali tawona 2016 singa tebangu ba 2014 aba basajja 16 Museveni yali tayitawo kwa bali bamuyingiridde unanga bwe bakola kugoba nebakasukeri nofuka kasasiro nebakajja kwakugona nofuka kaloli ogendoli ekibinja kyalimu abantu 6 nga Museveni yatakiri prominent people mu West End
nga kyonna kyagala kusuula
Museveni nga bakita fellowship
60 people
balina zoom ngerika abantu 6 nga balina sente omu bwayogera
asiga bano zino Tamale
yati kubuulira
2014 tebali
America tebagikola kindi bagikuwata America tebagiyingiramu ne basekerera Museveni ndiyabaka Museveni kalika abantu bamwe sako abantu bamwe kakati akatabo kano kafanagalira na kansanzu
mpandabe
sanzu aba America bwe bakasoma akake bagansinga kakyusibwa nsanvu musanvu
aka the art of war
ne bagansinga twali tukasomye tebali tukubye Vietnam akatabo kano Museveni abapugwa yagitegedde ekimusuzi kuba kakano kakano
kubanga laba omukadde abaina TV bakaba so
byonna ngenda kubiddamu ate kati na freedom olutalo luwedde kati ngenda concentrating nga
kaddala akawandika ku Christmas wa 2012
yes
jimyaka mwende ejise next year kaweze myaka 10 kanu kasingira lero omwana agenda okutula P7 oba yatulede P7
nakateka ko title ki
Understanding of your politics, a handbook for NRM cadres.
Nalindo was anti NRM bajja kaso.
Ndabako wano abasajja bambadde amasuuti ate balina mitwe.
Yes.
Nebo nabali masuuti so smart masuuti. Bamafya bati babala masuuti. Era
suuti ezo bozikebera zina bizifaanana.
Zina bizifaanana. Nange mbalaba.
Jako bujja mitwe.
Suuti zina bizifaanana na isagala kubalowooza. Alira bifaananyi biriyo nga birika ebitwe. Bano simanyi zina bizifaanana besagala kutembereza. Nyinza nokuwayiriza nenga kuliko wana kuliko de
kasomi
akati insomewa how mafia politics is applied in parliament we bantandikira page 29 ekitabo kyobaita understanding mafia politics
kyawandika mu bibiri emeka
Tamale yakiwandika ku Christmas day 25th December 2012 although many would wish to describe the situation in parliament as a power struggle between the legislature and executive, the presence of mafia politics is very prominent in the August House. Like in like in my earlier submissions, my considered view is that the political enemies of President Museveni are manipulating the House as they have tried to do. I saw with religious organizations, Mengo, and the civil society. However, we need to critically look at Parliament as an institution. Uganda's Parliament is composed of three formidable groups, and these are: number one, the opposition. They have come to realize that it is easy to hoodwink the NRM MPs to support their interests, the opposition interests, if they are packaged as national interests. For example, NRM MPs were tricked to support the censure motions against ministers, believing that they are fighting corruption. What the opposition MPs did was to package these anti-government motions as intended to solve a problem in government. What the NRM members of Parliament overlooked is that such motions undermine the credibility of their government, and it is not in the interest of the opposition to clean up the opponent. However, during such motions we hear slogans and phrases such as "this is not NRM, this is a national matter." And that should unite all of us, because corruption affects all, irrespective of our political affiliations. Therefore, the NRM members of Parliament on many occasions end up helping the opposition in this. In fact, a party like the NRM is capable of cleaning itself. The censure motions against ministers would originate from the movement caucus and not from the opposition, as the current trend today is. This explains why the Public Accounts Committee is headed by the opposition has taken center stage in the battle against corruption. What the government has failed to highlight is a list at PAC. To highlight at PAC is its own creation. Although it is a Commonwealth principle that the opposition heads a PAC, this does not mean that it grants us freedom. PAC is not CID that investigates cases. No, it bends on the Auditor General's report, whose independence depends in the leader in a particular country. In the case of Uganda, it's granted by President Museveni. No auditor is a foreign diplomat with diplomatic immunity. What this means is that the Auditor General's independence is granted by the government and the president, not the opposition. However, the public is made to believe that the Auditor General is a byproduct of the opposition, which has grabbed the credibility from the government, the credit from the government. Another important factor is that not all countries have vibrant parliaments. Having an elected parliament does not ensure its freedom. For example, between 1989 and 1985, we had multi-party politics. Did we have PAC in parliament? Did the opposition play its role? In many cases, the opposition members of parliament resorted to boycotts. They did not have the political clout like today, and it's because the executive then did not grant its freedom, because Obote was not a Democrat himself. Parliament's freedom has been granted by this NRM government. Number two, Akasose Kabade, the opposition. Two, money-making groups. This is a shrewd group that has taken advantage of the corruption in government. Although Parliament must be populist, but this does not mean that abandoning its cardinal role. MPs have realized that once the corrupt are subjected to pressure, they play the ball. Another score of Parliament against the executive is the nature of its operations. Although this is a legislative assembly whose cardinal duty would be to make laws, Parliament has surpassed the powers of this institution, of other institutions, and the public does not see this danger moving towards a parliamentary dictatorship. Parliament is seen by the gullible public as succeeding where the executive has failed. When ministers are put to task in Parliament, they are left to fight alone. This explains why Museveni, Saida Bumba, and Chindu Makubuya and the Choga ministers decided to implicate the president in their scandals in favor to win favors from the Public Accounts Committee members who are from the opposition. This creates the double loyalty. But who can best help one in danger? Is it the PAC or the president? I was amazed when State House officials handed over a list of RDCs to the Presidential Parliamentary Committee, whose bias against the president is obvious even to a baby. The committee recommended the sacking of RDCs because they knew that it would undermine the president. It was intended to prove that the affected RDCs, that the president could not protect them. In my opinion, Parliament cannot very cannot verify those type of Parliament cannot verify academic qualifications. This is the role of the courts because parliamentarians themselves have had this academic problem or problems and have always been referred to courts. In order to undermine the president, the committee ordered the scrapping of State House scholarship because those scholarships were giving the president political mileage, which had to be undermined. Interestingly, Parliament was not abolishing the scheme. It was rather being transferred from the president to the Minister of Education, where they can easily share the others for the offers for themselves. Furthermore, unlike the executive who has strictly observed his role, a parliament orders and arrests government corrupt officials. They have ordered sackings. They have also handled public issues like markets. They have revived court cases. They have intimidated the judiciary, the IGG, and other government institutions. In a nutshell, they successfully insulated themselves from public scrutiny because they are perceived as an active parliament. In villages, the LC chairperson who follows the law becomes very unpopular. People want action and not legal jargons. Fortunately, for members of parliament, nobody comes to question their mode of operation. And the media wrongly believe that the parliament is complementing the executive. They think that members of parliament are doing what the executive has failed to do. Parliament is also the largest source of information in Uganda. In news, in many cases, falls into the sensational nature which boasts newspaper sales. This has cemented the bond between members of parliament and the media. Secondly, newspaper sales depend on conflicts and not development issues. The way our parliament operates always reminds me of mob justice. Many villages prefer mob justice because it is quicker dispensing justice, precise, and does not require advocates or call for witnesses. Justice is done there and then, and no corruption. This is why Operation Wembley was popular and faster in solving problems that courts had failed to sort out at a very low cost. Just bullets and fuel to transport the operatives. This is when the executive tries to ask parliament to restrict itself or it attracts public anger because people see this as an attempt to undermine a very working parliament. And number 3, the ambitious young members of parliament. This is a group comprising of young members of parliament in parliament. This is a dominant voice of parliament. Their bond is buoyed by the following factors. 1, they are young and view themselves as future leaders. They have realized that it is easy to get quick money from confusion both in the government and outside the outside world. They know that in order to retain their constituencies and earn public trust and cover their footmarks, they must take on the executive. They have also reaped the political benefits. They are always quoted by the government. Our government gives more attention to troublemakers and within its ranks than those who support it. In fact, that many of our political commentators overlook is the possibility of these members of parliament transforming themselves into a political party, and the signs are very clear as they are actually nominal party members to their respective parties. They are confronted with a choice between their group interests. They prefer the latter. To many members of parliament, tags, symbols, and membership cards are becoming liabilities. This is best demonstrated by the action of some who disassociate publicly from government decisions, and it is becoming clear that many ministers see themselves independent candidates in the future. Those pursuing the anti-Museveni agenda in parliament follow the same script like the counterparts elsewhere. They want to parade themselves as all. A situation when they are a few individuals pursuing their own interests. The trick is to make Ugandan public and the international community that a whole parliament and not a few individuals pursuing individual interests are causing trouble in parliament. When it comes to religion, the actions of Father Geristan and the retired Father Gaetano and retired Bishop Niringie are deliberately attributed to be the position of all the Uganda's religious leaders. I landed on a document which some religious leaders authored as a pastoral letter and were giving those pending signatures 5 million shillings on last Easter. Some Easter summons were paid for as adverts to create an impression that the government was facing trouble from religious leaders, whereas it was the work of Niringie and company. The discredited non-government organizations like the Law Society are part of the scheme. The Teachers Union, women and human rights groups joined the bandwagon. Makerere University was setting up a fellowship under Bishop Niringiye to teach religion and good governance. This was a strategy to use the university students to walk to work crusades. This attempt also failed. The Teachers Union faces a lot of credibility problems. Its members were not interested in knowing how the union were more interested in knowing how the union utilizes their money than the low salaries. In other words, union leaders have no credibility to take on the government when they have rotten skeletons in the Law Society's cupboards. In case of the Law Society, its record stinks like a decomposing corpse. How many Ugandans believe in the credibility of the Law Society depending on the conduct of the land friends and the land judges? The present therefore did not attack these groups. He isolated his critics from the group. Parliament is also using the same tactics. They are portraying themselves as a parliament and not as individuals. This trick is bound to also fall elsewhere. Secondly, like elsewhere, they do not discuss the gist of the matter. This reasoning features everywhere in their attempts to discredit the president. They don't tell the members of parliament, they don't tell us that members of parliament can be arrested. It is also a taboo or illegal. With all our allies in the media, they do not discuss the parliamentary privileges that they go hand in hand with their responsibilities. They do not tell us that members of parliament do not enjoy diplomatic immunity. They are also Ugandans like everybody. It is not allowed anywhere for the members of parliament to use the parliamentary privileges to malign and discredit others who do not have the chance to go to parliament to respond. However, Ugandan members of parliament believe that they are above the law. Parliamentary discipline requires members of parliament to substantiate and to table evidence which are investigated and verified by the investigative institutions of the government. A courageous member of parliament can take the same words or accusations against another parliament. However, Ugandan members of parliament believe that they are with impunity. This means that the members could not be allowed to discredit the government in the death of Nebanda and in the death of Nebanda and I think parliamentary privileges. No sensible Ugandan should support this. This is not parliamentary democracy. It is not parliamentary democracy. The concept of separation of powers.
Nti
achino wachiwandika Christmas 2012 tuwale Christmas
I normally write my books when my children are away buba somi nnyo bayimba mu choir
go Christmas twagenda mu misa
nti susoma
ne ku Christmas kubanga abalimu abalinga gwa batasoma basoma akiri ku Christmas ne ku
bafaza bajja kola sermons nze tonvumbira mu church nja kwata akazendalo
okulutya
tuyogera mu bya bufuzi nti nsirike nnyo omutwe
faza bwayogera ebyobufuzi oyimuka n'okwata akazinda n'orespondinga mukkiriziya yawo
twali mu kuziika gundi n'agamba omusajja n'agamba